What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Master League, something I don't often get the chance to do outside of the occasional Mega Master League video, featuring a Pokemon that honestly even I forgot was buffed this season, Galarian Zapdos, which gained access to Low Kick. Now these battles were submitted to the channel by FredLichey333, who's been trying to get me to feature their Hundo Galarian Zapdos for a few seasons now, but after the move update I think now is finally the right time. Now does this suddenly transform Zapdos into top meta for the Master League? Is it worth using your golden bottle cap for this Pokemon? No, unfortunately not, and actually it might even be a bit of a downgrade because unless close combat is super effective, in the Master League you're just never going to low kick farm down a Pokemon after landing just one charge attack, whereas at least with counter, yes you generate energy a lot slower, but one charge move plus the fast move damage will probably be enough to KO over time. Either way, I guess we'll see how it plays out in these battles, but before we do that, let's get into the question of the day. Where do you think we'll get the chance to see the Galarian Bird's signature moves in Pokemon Go, and what stats would you give them in PvP? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Alright, so go into the first battle, leading with a Hundo Palkia into a Kyogre. So that's a great lead matchup for us. The opponent going to be safe swapping into Zacian, and we're going to come in with our Necrozma. Now we're going straight for the Sunsteel Strike here, not messing around, not baiting at all. Sunsteel Strike doesn't quite get the one shot. That is really unfortunate for us. However, we should live any one charge move they throw against us. I believe that's a close combat, and we can Shadow Claw farm them down. The opponent comes back in with the Kyogre, and we can reach a last second Dark Pulse before the opponent is able to Waterfall farm us down. Now we can come back in with the Palkia, and the opponent is going to farm up a decent amount of energy and fire off the charge move, but we don't need to shield anything here. The opponent likely goes for Avalanche there. Honestly, I can't really tell what these charge moves are, and they swap out into a Kyurem Black. But that's fine with us. We can go for the Spatial Rend, guarantee the shield or huge damage, and now come in with our Galarian Zapdos. Of course, we're going to have to shield. They do go for the Ice type move. I can't really remember what moves this thing has, but either way, we're going to go for a close combat. Close combat, going to grab the final shield. The opponent will be reaching another charge move of their own. However, we can safely shield up the Zapdos as they go for the move once again, and now they come back in with the Kyogre, but we're able to swap out, make a catch onto our Palkia, bank a ton of energy on the Zapdos, and we are very close to back-to-back charge moves here. So first of all, going to go for the Fly, gets the KO. They come back in with the Kyurem, but we're able to reach a close combat, and of course, super effective, that gets the knockout, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, another great lead matchup for us. This time around, the opponent's going to be safe swapping into Dialga, and we're going to respond straight away with our Zapdos. Now, we're actually going to bait here, and the opponent is going to use a shield. So that's great for us because, of course, Fly is resisted damage into the steel typing, and honestly, wouldn't really do that much damage at all. Whereas now, we've grabbed the shield, we're actually going to full send the close combat. I don't mind this play. Do they double shield? No, we're able to take out the Dialga. They're going to come back in with the Kyogre, but Zapdos not done just yet. Of course, we do debuff our defense. However, honestly, that just gives them less farm, but still allows us to reach another close combat, dealing huge damage up against the Kyogre. Now, we're going to come in, we're going to no-shield our Palkia as the opponent is going to go for another Avalanche, maybe? I actually don't know. That doesn't really look like Avalanche there, but either way, their final Pokemon going to be a Zacian. We're going to chip with the Aqua Tail as we realized last time around Sunsteel Strike didn't quite get the KO. However, honestly, it will be kind of overkill at this point, so it looks like we are looking to bait with a Dark Pulse. Either way, the opponent is going to fire off the charge move. We're now going to go for that Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse gonna be shielded by the opponent. They swap back into Kyogre, and we are kind of just forced to throw some energy here. We're gonna go for a slight undercharge, hoping to give a little bit of farm for the Palkia. Unfortunately, that still gets the knockout, but we should be looking fine here as we're able to reach a last second Aqua Tail before the opponent gets the back-to-back charge moves. Aqua Tail gets the KO from that range, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Garchomp in the lead. So the opponent is going to be on Mudshot. We're going to look to swap out and catch a charge move here as the opponent is going to go straight for the Twister. Twister does decent damage there, and now they swap out into their Zacian. We can go straight for the close combat. Of course, Fly is resisted damage here, and probably don't expect to grab a shield just because, of course, close combat is not super effective, but we're able to deal pretty decent damage there and still force the opponent to throw some energy. They actually go for a close combat, debuffing their defense. Unfortunately, they will still reach another charge move. However, it does make this farm down quite a little bit more comfortable. Now they're going to come back in with the Garchomp, and we can go straight for a Sunsteel Strike. Now this should be grabbing a shield, and it's going to do exactly that. We swap out there, we probably try to catch a potential Sand Tomb or Earth Power, but unfortunately the opponent holds onto the energy. They go for another Twister. We're full sending the Spatial Rend right now. Spatial Rend is going to get the knockout, and let's see, the opponent's final Pokemon is going to be a Kyurem White, and here we're going to farm up to the Spatial Rend, and this time we're going to bait with an Aqua Tail. Arctel is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. The opponent is going to throw just before we do reach another Spatial Rend. So at this point, we're going to look to shield. The opponent swaps out. We had a lot of time to react there, but we don't. We end up clicking on the Spatial Rend, and that is a nightmare for us because, of course, we waste so much energy. We swap back into Anacrozma, but that's going to be game over, as the opponent can fire off the charge move. They can now just commit to a Dragon Breath farm down up against the Palkia, and unfortunately we lose that game. But into the next battle, we're going to see a Palkia mirror match. However, we do have a best buddied Palkia, I believe, so we do have a higher CP, and we should be winning CMP as well. We're going to bait with an Arctel, however, and the opponent is actually going to call the bait. That is devastating for us. So we swap out, we look to catch a Spatial Rend. The opponent going to bank so much energy, and then come in with a Purified Shiny Kyogre. So we're going to go for a Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse honestly does decent damage, and it will actually be enough damage to two-shot them or come very close to. So the opponent is going to actually no-shield that. Really nice play there on the opponent's end, realizing that they can live that. We're going to shield the Origin Pulse and then commit to the farm down. Now the opponent's going to come in with their final Pokemon, which is going to be a Shiny Dialga. We're going for another Dark Pulse here, as of course, unfortunately for us, the Sunsteel Strike is going to be resisted. However, the opponent going to throw just before we do reach another Dark Pulse, and from this range, Roar of Time actually will get the KO. Again, I am kind of just guessing what these charge moves are because I'm not really that familiar with the charge move animations for a lot of them. I don't play in the Master League, and of course, I just can't read this writing either. But either way, we're going to get the KO with the close combat. We swap out. The opponent is going to full send the Spatial Rend there, getting the knockout. Of course, I can tell the difference between a Spatial Rend and the Arctel just based on the damage alone. But anyways, we're going to look to shield here. The opponent does fire for another move. I don't have a clue what that was there because we shielded it. But this should just be an Arctel, hopefully. And if it is, we're going to live the damage and we will come out, I think, with back-to-back charge moves. So the opponent just concedes the match. Or maybe that was the last Pokemon. Honestly, I can't really remember. But either way, into the next battle, we're going to see a Ho-Oh in the lead. The opponent's going to be safe swapping immediately into a Kyurem Black. We're going to use a shield here, and we're now going to fire off a Fly. So Fly is going to be shielded by the opponent, and the opponent is actually just barely going to outpace us to the next charge move, which isn't ideal for us, but we can look to double shield here. Now going to look to overfarm just slightly in this matchup, throwing on good timing. Fly, number 2, going to be shielded by the opponent, but actually it's slightly cheaper to get to a third Fly, so we will outpace them this time around. Fly gets the KO there, and let's see, they're going to come back in with the Ho-Oh, and we will actually reach another Fly here before they fully farm us down, so we're going to go straight for that Fly. Fly is going to connect there, of course, doesn't do too much damage, but we can come back in with the Palkia. All shields are down. This Brave Bird is going to hurt, but they can never go for the Incinerate. Farm down. Their final Pokemon is going to be a Primarina, but we've got a great answer in the form of Anacrozma. The opponent going to be going straight for the Hydro Cannon. We can actually just go straight for the Sunsteel Strike. There's really no point in over farming here. Sunsteel Strike going to get the clean one shot. They come back in with the Ho-Oh. They need to commit to the full farm down, but we will reach a last second Dark Pulse. Now Dark Pulse actually won't quite get the KO there, but we do have the Arctel loaded, so we can throw on CMP, winning CMP, getting the KO from 1 HP there, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we see another Ho-Oh lead. This time around, we expected the instant swap, and it backfires massively as the opponent does not swap out. And now, yeah, we just don't. We go down a shield there already. They're going to come in with the Palkia, and we are in such a bad way right now. We are going to no-shield. We can, of course, get to back-to-back charge moves now. We're going to go for Fly first because it's going to not debuff our defense. This time around, we're only going to reach one more charge move. We go for close combat, dealing big damage. And now we actually swap out there into our Necrozma. Now, of course, Necrozma has a really bad matchup up against the Ho-Oh, so no point in shielding here. The opponent probably will be able to swap out of this matchup eventually, but no, they're actually going to choose to stay in with the Palkia. We go for the Dark Pulse, we get the KO there, and now they come back in with that Ho-Oh. So, of course, we do still have our Palkia very healthy up against the Ho-Oh, but they're going to get a monstrous farm down. They don't need to shield the Dark Pulse, and, of course, Brave Bird is going to hit for huge damage. So at this point, we are probably going to come back in with the Palkia. We might look to go for a Peekaboo swap there, but no, it doesn't work out for us. You can see we were trying it, but we're going to have to shield the Brave Bird now. The opponent's going to come in with a Zacian. So at this point, we're still not, like, guaranteed to lose this game. Okay, never mind, we are. We tried to catch a charge move, does not work out, and so we just concede the match. But into the next battle, we are going to see a Zacian in the lead. The opponent's going to be safe swapping into a Zekrom, and we can just look to shield here and presumably going to farm up at least 2 Spatial Rend. This time around, we are actually going to full send it. So Spatial Rend going to be shielded by the opponent there, unfortunately, but we can still reach an Aqua Tail, and this is resisted damage, so it probably doesn't get shielded. But let's see, the opponent actually is going to double shield there. That is huge for us because Aqua Tail would not get the knockout from that range, whereas now we're dealing slightly more damage with the Dragon Breaths, it looks like, so we're able to go for a full farm down. And their final Pokemon going to be a Reshiram. It looks like we had the energy for the Spatial Rend, but we just play it safe there. We go for the Aqua Tail, and now, of course, we're going to come in with our Zapdos. The opponent can reach a charge move. However, all shields are down. It won't get the KO, and at this point, we're going to look to overfarm. We actually go for a fly here. I'm not really sure why. We should just go for close combat, since, of course, close combat would get the knockout there, and we debuff ourselves. But, of course, we didn't give much farm to the Zacian anyways. We're now going to come in with Necrozma. This is a good matchup for us, as long as we can reach the charge move before they get to back-to-back close combats. Sunsteel Strike gets the KO from that range, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see Groudon in the lead, and once again, looks like we swap out there, trying to assume the opponent will be swapping out straight away, but they don't. So instead, not the best matchup for us once again, as we're going to see Zapdos aligned to their Zacian, but we're actually going to shield this time around, and now we have back-to-back close combats. So the first one is going to be shielded by the opponent. We are going to throw the next one straight away here, and this is going to deal decent damage. It's actually going to grab both shields from the opponent, so we're just going to swap out there, preserve some health on our Zapdos. They actually swap into a Cure, but that is not a good matchup for them whatsoever. Of course, Sunsteel Strike gets the clean one-shot there. I don't really know why they did that, but either way, they're going to come back in with the Groudon, and at this point, we are going to no shield as they full send the Precipice Blades. We can now come in with the Palkia, of course, going to hit for super effective damage here with our Aqua Tails. We swap out, we try to catch a charge move once again. Doesn't work out, as now they can just settle for a Fire Punch, and Fire Punch will get the KO. They come back in with the Zacian, and of course, we're going for the Aqua Tail. So Aqua Tail, of course, not going to deal too much damage here, and unfortunately, they have the charge move loaded. We kind of have to no shield here, but close combat does huge damage. We now throw the charge move. Honestly, we should have overfarmed here because we know Groudon. Well, actually, we go for the undercharge, but that doesn't work out for us because the opponent barely surviving, able to reach the next charge move here, and we just narrowly missed out on reaching an Aqua Tail. I don't know if that would have KO'd from that range, but either way, into the next battle, we're going to see another Zacian in the lead. Now, I'm going to be honest, as someone who doesn't really play the Master League, well, I don't play it at all, but I did used to enjoy watching Master League content. I feel like Zacian has kind of just ruined it from like a enjoyment perspective from actually watching it. I feel like before I could have enjoyed watching Master League content on like Home/Henry's channel, for example, whereas now every team just has Zacian and it's just so boring, but we're trying to make do anyways. We're going to see a swap into Palkia, another one that's basically on every single team. Of course, we are running it ourselves, but the opponent going to go for the Spatial Rend there, it looks like. We can now go for a close combat, of course. We wanted to overfarm, throw like a decent amount of fast food pressure before we do have to debuff ourselves, and we will force the opponent to throw some energy. So the opponent goes for the knockout there. We can come in with the Palkia. They come back in with that Zacian, and we're actually going to no shield here. So close combat doesn't quite get the KO there, and of course, now they debuff themselves. We can go for an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail also doesn't quite get the KO, but we can now snipe them with our Necrozma. Now, the opponent's final Pokemon going to be a Kyurem White, and unfortunately for us, they do have Fire-type coverage with Fusion Flare, so we're going to look to shield this as the opponent goes for it, and unfortunately, we lose CMP. We go for a Dark Pulse bait. Dark Pulse grabs a shield from the opponent, which is really nice for us, but the opponent will be outpacing us, and unfortunately, super effective damage. Fusion Flare gets the KO. Palkia just way too low there to reach any charge moves, and we end up losing that game. But into the next battle, we're going to see Reshiram in the lead. So this is going to be a fairly neutral matchup for us. We're going to go straight for the Spatial Rend till the opponent does not try and make a catch. And Spatial Rend is going to be shielded. Now, this is one of the matchups up against Dragons where, honestly, Aqua Tail isn't that bad of a bait just because, of course, it's going to hit for neutral damage there. But we're going to swap out. It looks like we're just basically sacrificing the Zapdos because it really doesn't have play up against a Lunala at all. Of course, our low kicks are triple resisted by the Psychic and Ghost typing. Fly, not going to deal too much damage, but the opponent doesn't commit to the farm down. That is huge for us because they could have very comfortably farmed us down. We were doing no fast pressure whatsoever, whereas now, unfortunately, we are lagging a ton there. Well, I think we're lagging. That is not ideal for us in the slightest because now they reach an extra charge move. They're going to come in with a Zekrom. Of course, we can't go for Sunsteel Strike as it's resisted, so we go for the Dark Pulse instead, but we grab the final shield. Spatial Rent, gonna connect, it gets the KO there, and let's see what they want to do. They come back in with the Reshiram. We should be able to reach an Aqua Tail before they farm us down. However, is this enough damage here? Aqua Tail, neutral damage, and it's a CMP tie. That is best case scenario for us, because now we can come in, of course, go for the Shadow Claw farm down. The opponents, well, they're going to come in with Lunala, get farmed down on the Reshiram as well, and we're able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see Zacian in the lead here. So again, another pretty boring lead matchup for us, as we're just going to farm up a ton of energy and then fire off the Aqua Tail. Of course, we do generate energy a bit faster than the opponent, so the opponent is going to always throw their charge move after us, because otherwise we would farm up to over 100, but they don't go for the close combat. Instead, going for the Behemoth Blade and grabbing a shield advantage, but we can just spam out these Aqua Tails insanely fast, and Aqua Tail number 3 will actually get the knockout. The opponent's going to come in with their own Palkia. We are going to look to overfarm here and then swap out, looking to catch a Spatial Rent onto our Necrozma, and we're able to do exactly that. Now, their final Pokemon is going to be Kyogre, so it is great that we have preserved some HP on our Palkia, because it is a very strong answer. Now, at this point, the opponent, they have to throw some energy, otherwise we're going to reach another Dark Pulse. So, of course, the opponent goes for the charge move there. I think that was probably an Avalanche. But either way, we're going to come back in with the Palkia, and we actually overfarm a little bit too much here, which does allow the opponent to throw some energy. They grab our final shield. At this point, this is going to be game over unless they no-shield here. But the opponent thinks they've caught an Aqua Tail bait, and now, actually, we're looking to be in a great position. We swap out, we look to catch the charge move. Doesn't matter, the opponent having none of it, they just concede the match. Now, going into the next battle, we're going to see Melmetal in the lead. We're going to be swapping out straight away into our Zapdos, and we are just going to no-shield the first move. The opponent goes for a Rock Slide there, which is quite interesting. I guess having Rock Slide for coverage up against Ho-Oh maybe. But either way, we're going to go for Close Combat. Close Combat is going to connect, does big damage, and we already have back-to-back. So this second one should be grabbing a shield advantage, but now they can Waterfall farm us down. So, of course, we don't need to shield anything here. We're going to no-shield the first move, as the opponent is going to go for the Avalanche, but they do have back-to-back moves. So this time around, we will look to shield the second one. Can we commit to a full farm down by the opponent? Not going to allow for that to happen, but we swap out. We catch a charge move onto our Necrozma, and we're able to catch a Dynamic Punch this time around, which would do a little bit more damage than the Rock Slide generally, but of course, into our Necrozma, where it is neutral damage, that does do more. But either way, we are going to likely just no-shield the next charge move as well. Unfortunately, we haven't quite put them into range where we can Shadow Claw farm them down, but potentially we will look to shield. No, never mind. We're just going to save both shields for the Palkia, hoping it can sweep in the end game. However, unfortunately for us, they're going to come in with Akira, and we are going to go for the Aqua Tail bait, but the opponent calls the bait there, and yeah, we already know that's game over, and so we concede the match. Into the next battle, and I believe the final battle of this video, once again leading into a Zacian, and again we are just going to look to overfarm quite a lot, farming up to at least back-to-back Aqua Tails here before finally throwing a charge move. An Aqua Tail going to be no-shielded. They can live the next Aqua Tail pretty comfortably as well, and so they will no-shield again, and now finally throw a charge move. Now, of course, it makes sense because they can go for a close combat, debuff themselves, but we swap at the same time as the opponent, and that is a big call for us because they come in with Dialga, which of course is not going to appreciate the damage from a close combat. Now, last time we did bait with a fly. This time we actually full send the close combat, and they do end up shielding. Are they going to look to double shield here? Well, we're going for another close combat anyways to guarantee the shield or huge damage, and the opponent is actually going to shield there. At this point, we've got both shields, so we can just no shield this, come in with the Necrozma, and then look to overfarm massively. Of course, Roar of Time is still going to hit for decent damage, but we are actually not going to allow them to get there. Instead, firing off the Dark Pulse just before they get there. Dark Pulse gets the KO. They're going to come in with Rhyperior, and Palkia just narrowly able to reach an Aqua Tail. This is double super effective. It does huge damage, but can we Shadow Claw farm them down? We're actually going to no-shield this. The opponent has drill run coverage this season, but they come back in with the Zacian. Can we still win this game here? The opponent, they go for close combat, but that's huge for us. That debuffs themselves, which means we can commit to the full farm down, coming out with the charge we've loaded. Sunsteel Strike easily gets the KO from that range, and we take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.